Flabbergasted podcast, where we just can't believe you haven't seen it. Every episode, we discuss a movie that one of us has seen and the other hasn't. Follow us on Instagram @FlabberPod and subscribe in your podcast app of choice. I'm your host, Jessica. Let's get to it. Today, we're talking about Beetlejuice. I'm here with Rachel, and you may remember her from, other episodes she's been on. But specifically, we podcasted about Beetlejuice, just one, last year.
Yeah, man.
So it was really fun to see that this film was coming out with a sequel, or the film that we podcasted about was coming out with a sequel. The teaser trailer was really cool. It was really fun. And I was like, okay, obviously we have to go see this movie because we just talked about it. So we went last night, opening weekend, and there were so many people in the theater, which is great for a movie, but also I kind of got used to like slight post-COVID times when people still weren't going out, and so it was a little adjustment to get used to people being so all up in my space.
Yeah, I honestly didn't love that part. I leaned over to you and I was like, I haven't been in a movie theater this. Honestly, I think the last time I was in a movie theater that was that packed. Okay, so I forgot that I went to go see Lord of the Rings with Rogie and Tim in Fort Wayne, and that was kind of full. But I would say before then, it was like when the last Star Wars movie came out. Like, that's how long ago it's been since I've been in a movie theater that has that many people in it.
So that's a really long time for
you.
I mean, we went and saw Deadpool and Wolverine a few weeks ago, and it was, equally as packed, would you say? Maybe not quite as much, but we also saw it on the Thursday showing, which has an impact.
Yeah, I tend to specifically not go on opening night for things. The only movies that I would go on opening night for was Star Wars, and that was it, just because of like the atmosphere. But like every other time, I'm just like, I've also gone to the movies like several times like by myself, just because like nobody was around or available and I wanted to go. And so I've been the only person in the movie theater before. And that's been like kind of great. Or I'm just kind of like, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about like being quiet or anything.
You can just fully be in the moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
We do tend to go to like opening night, if we can make it to the Thursday night showing, Jeremy and I, just because if it's a movie we've really been waiting for or we're really amped up to see, I don't like the spoilers, and we're on social media enough that inevitably it will get spoiled for us, so we try to be really mindful of that. And the other thing that I like is if I go to the later one on Thursday nights, if I don't make it to the earlier one, there are usually the only people that go are people that want to actually watch the movie. So if we go, and I don't mind watching a movie with kids, I need to say that, but sometimes there's a bunch of kids and they're not like really there to watch the movie. They were just looking for something to do. Yeah. Which I totally get, but it impacts my experience. So I try to like be strategic about when I go.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, we went one time and I swear there were these two like teenagers that were full on making out. And I was like, guys, you're killing me over here. Like, Okay, thanks for that. It was very interesting. But anyways, so we go to the movie, we are watching it, and when you saw the preview, did you have any like first thoughts? Were you excited? What were you thinking?
So I was definitely excited. I can't remember if I saw the preview or if Jeremy sent it to me. And then like I went and like watched it. But like, I mean, when the preview opens, like it's just the Deo song, like Banana Boat song. And it's like the choir singing it. And so it just kind of like, I felt like it was very impactful, the trailer, because it was just kind of brought back memories from that. And like it opened up on the town, and like honestly, I should have rewatched the trailer. I think part of it opened up on the town, and then part of it opened up on the miniature town set of it, because in the movie, like it was definitely part of the town, but then it switched to going through the miniature and then back, like, and so I'm curious if in the trailer
switch a lot without being super obvious that it did.
Yeah. And so it was definitely fun to see Catherine O'Hara back and Winona Ryder. And then also the new members of the cast. But yeah, and so I was definitely excited to see it. I didn't love Beetlejuice. I did re-listen to our podcast from last year prior to going to see Beetlejuice. And so it was not my favorite film. But it's still, I really liked pieces about it, and so I was excited to see and I really like those actresses, and so I knew that that would be fun. Fun fact outside of before we jump into Beetlejuice is, so because we did the we watched the first movie and I saw it, I go to trivia on Thursday nights with a group of friends.
Wait, was this trivia night after you re-listened to the podcast?
No, it was before.
Okay.
Because I re-listened to it on Friday.
Okay, perfect.
And then, so on Thursday, we went to trivia, and there was a round of 4 questions that was about the first movie, Beetlejuice, because the second movie was coming out. And so 2 of the answers were very easy, and so everybody on the team knew, but the other 2, I knew because of having watched the movie with you for this podcast and doing that. And so one of them I was really excited about because I'm terrible with remembering people's names, which I was again reminded of when I was listening to our podcast, because I was just calling them by I was calling Catherine O'Hara Moira because that's what I knew her from, was Schitt's Creek.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions was what was the name of the couple that passed away in the beginning of the Beetlejuice film? And so I was like, no, I specifically remember that it's A and B, because that was a thing of the names of, there was somebody with an A, a B, and C, and a D name, and I just thought that was a theme throughout Beetlejuice, and it kind of wasn't, but that was one of the things.
But it was definitely noticeable because it's, what was it? Adam and Barbara, and Charles and Delia. Yeah. So there's your ABCD, which is fun, I think.
Yeah, and then Lydia jump into L.
Yeah, and that just didn't work, but. I like to think it's the owners of the house.
Yeah.
Were alphabetically. So you got that answer right.
Yes.
Even though members of your team were a little uncertain.
They were like, I'm pretty sure. And then the next question was what character, who is the actress that played Lydia? And I was like, Lydia was definitely Winona Ryder, and that was one of the answers that they had thought it was Michael and Lydia, and I was like, no. But they were like, are you sure?
Michael, because Michael Keaton.
Yeah. And so he was like, I don't know, because Alec Baldwin is his name. So would he really have an A name? And I was like, look, I just remember it being ABC. I can't speak to anything other than that. And so, yeah, I would appreciate that this podcast led me to be helpful to our team in winning trivia.
Because you won.
We did. It wasn't just because of me, but yes, we did win.
I like to think so. I like to think I contributed to that as well.
Yes, for watching Beetlejuice together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get too farther along in the podcast, this was directed by Tim Burton and written by Al Gough and Miles Miller. And I'm seeing Seth Grahame-Smith, who I'm unfamiliar with, but they say Al and Miles for the podcast that we listened to. They were writers and creators of Smallville.
Oh, okay.
So from season 1 to season 7, which is really fun for us because Jeremy and I are big Smallville people. That's sort of how we met. And the other one is, writers for Wednesday as well. So, and Tim Burton was but he was involved in Wednesday too. So kind of a nice little grouping there. Did you see Wednesday?
So, no, I had it on my list to watch Wednesday, but I did not have the availability to just sit down and start. Well, I didn't really have the mind space to just sit down and do that. And then I lost Netflix. So I'm trying to figure out a way to get Netflix again. And so that way I could watch it because I heard that it was really good.
I was kind of a fan of Wednesday, from the old TV shows, or not TV shows, the old movies, and maybe the TV show. And I just really liked, I don't know, it was enjoyable. And so I kind of thought, I'm just going to give this a shot. Maybe I won't like it, and that's fine because I don't really like horror.
Yeah.
I like suspense and I kind of like thriller-esque, but I don't really like horror. So I wasn't sure like where this would fall because they could go like really crazy dark with it or just like kind of, I don't know. There's a line there. There's a scale there, and I'm just not on the far end of it. And so I wasn't sure if I would like it. But after the first episode, I was like, okay, let's try another one. And then it just sort of sucked me in because I'm also very much like a mystery solver fan. Like I really like shows about mysteries, and this ended up having a mystery component to it. So then I'm like especially hooked in, and it was pretty great. I liked it. So add it to your list for when you get Netflix back.
Okay.
Jenna Ortega played Wednesday. I forgot to mention this, and is the daughter of Lydia in this new Beetlejuice, and her name is Astrid, which I actually really kind of like as a name. Astrid, you know.
Whenever I hear Astrid, I just think of The Office because that's what Jan named her baby that Michael was kind of a part of her life, and so that's my connection.
I didn't see The Office, so I don't.
Oh my gosh, Jessica. We could do a whole podcast about it.
I'm adding it to my list because a couple other people have told me some stuff about it, and I feel like I'm going to have to try.
It with your nieces before.
I know.
And you haven't watched it yet?
No. Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh. But did I see that Tim Burton? So I know Tim Burton got a star. Was it for? I don't really know how stars work.
I don't think you get stars for anything in particular. I think it's sort of you're invited to purchase a star kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
And I think you have to fund it as well.
Fun.
But I think you get like nominated for it, and then if you want it, you like do it.
Oh, okay.
But yes, he did get a star recently.
I saw that, a couple who were there. Danny DeVito, he was there too. So that was a fun little thing. He popped up in this movie.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Danny DeVito is, I think it's just what I want to bring up is there's history there because Danny DeVito was Penguin in Batman Forever. Batman Returns, not Batman Forever. Batman Returns 92-ish.
The one with Michael Keaton?
Michael Keaton was in 2, but yes, so this would be the second one. The second one Michael Keaton was in, and Penguin was Danny DeVito. And so I think this movie opens in the underworld or afterlife. Sorry, not underworld, right?
No, it opens with them going through
the model.
Because it's the town. Because I see a Mustang driving through the town, and then it hops back into the model.
Yes.
And then it hops, I think, back to town and then the model. But so it opens with the model. And I think, are we like upstairs and then it goes to the underworld?
It's pretty quick that we get there, and I just didn't realize. Here's the thing, guys, listeners. We went to see this, and I didn't even take a notebook. And next time we go, I will take a notebook because even if I can't see what I'm writing, it will jog my memory enough for a couple of these things because things happened, and I was like, I wanted to write it down.
Yeah.
And I missed it, but the film opens. We're going through the model, different things are happening, and we see Lydia, I believe, she does this. You see her doing this thing where you find out she's been a host of this show called Ghost Attic or something like that, I believe. Ghost House. Yeah. And she's talking about it, and she has this we're led to believe it might be like a hallucination of Beetlejuice in the audience, and she sort of freaks out and panics, runs to the bathroom. You get introduced to her weird boyfriend, which we're not going to talk about right this second. And her phone is blown up. There's other stuff that's happening, but I need to get to this part. Her phone's being blown up. And she figures out that Delia's calling her, and she's like, what do you need? And Delia's like, you have to come to my show. So she goes to the gallery, and Delia says, my husband has left me. And she's like, where did he go? Like, he just, went to the store or whatever. And she's like, no, he died. And there's I believe he's French, graffiti artist that is painting behind her, because her whole concept for this gallery is pretty cool, actually, but I wouldn't even be able to repeat it right now if I could, but it's pretty cool. And the graffiti artist is mad because she's canceled the show because her husband has died. And in a crazy way, which we'll come back to. So the graffiti artist walks out of the gallery and almost gets hit by a car, which I was like, oh my God, he's going to die right there. But he doesn't. Instead, he walks into a manhole and dies. And then he wakes up And that's how we got to the afterlife.
Yeah.
And so he's wandering around in the afterlife trying to, make it to wherever he needs to go. And he passes the janitor and he's like, where do I go? And the janitor's like, rah, 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 rah. And he goes along his way. And then like the camera sort of pans around and we see that is Danny DeVito. And Danny DeVito was Penguin in Batman Returns. And what I noticed about this, because it's Danny DeVito, he's pretty great. He eats something. We're following him on his little journey around as he's cleaning stuff, and he eats something, and you'll have to see the movie, but it reminded me of a very impactful scene in Batman Returns when he's like eating fish because he's eating raw fish, and he like bites, and all of this black ooze just like drops out of his mouth in this very graphically like just visceral way.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I feel like it happened in the beginning of this Beetlejuice when he's like, he goes to eat something or drink something, it just sort of like pours out of his mouth in that same kind of way. And it just threw me right back to that scene, which is forever ago in Batman Returns. But I'm sure they did that on purpose because the three of them worked on the movie. Like,
just having a little bit of those pop-ins from the last
those fun
one.
things, like, because I think they think it's fun too.
Yeah,
like being able to call back
a little bit
to that.
Yeah.
So I brushed over a lot to get us to the afterlife because I finally found the thread to string us there. But did you have anything you wanted to add about any of that?
I mean, yeah, we just definitely got some recognition of what Lydia has been doing. She's got that talk show. And just kind of that's what she's been hanging out and a part of is just kind of that experience has taken her through this journey. Her mom's still doing art. Her parents were still around. We found out that her dad, they were still together and then he had passed away. And then we just kind of got a little bit of like their backstory, but not like a absolute ton of it. And then we popped into the afterlife and moved on to kind of the next scene of just kind of what was going on down there.
I think it was really fun to see that because in the first film, you don't really recognize that she sees ghosts other than Adam and Barbara, Lydia. Like, she sees ghosts now. And that's a thing, and she's made it into this thing where she can make a living off it and everything. So she goes to the bathroom, and there's, like, a ghost there. And at first I thought it's this woman wearing a makeup, prop and she's just like complaining.
They're in a TV studio.
Yeah, right.
Like she calls her by her name.
Yeah.
Like
so you would think it wasn't that far off to think that, but no, she is a ghost and her sleazy boyfriend is like just oozing inauthenticity with how he's talking to her, and I just did not like his character the whole time. He reminded me of Otis from the first one.
Yeah.
Which I think that's kind of the formula they were probably using.
Yeah, you could tell that he was definitely more manager than he was like boyfriend because he's like, we've got a show to finish. Like, we've got this to do. Like, he was very much trying to stay on task with things. So, yeah.
Yeah. So we get into, I think we stay in the afterlife. And before we get too far along, we do see this woman. These crates are broken open from a weird electrical accident that the janitor has, and this woman basically staples herself back together. This woman is Monica Bellucci, not to be confused with Jim Belushi. I'm not really familiar exactly with her last name, but she was also in Matrix Reloaded.
Oh, fun.
And Revolutions. And I really do like her voice.
Oh, okay.
When she's talking, obviously, and she says "my love" in this movie too, which I think is so fun because she says that in the Matrix movies.
Nice.
But I think she's very pretty, even with the staples in her face and everything. Then we jump to Beetlejuice, who's running a call center, and I don't really know what the call center is going on about. I think he's supposed to be helping ghosts evict humans from their homes. But I think that's what it. Yeah, he's turned it. I think, but I kind of wasn't real.
For 100% sure. It also might have been like couples therapy, like ghosts couples therapy or something. Because it looked like there was definitely people asking for advice, and I feel like there was maybe some like marriage advice in there. So I'm not 100% sure too. Like, but he definitely has a job going on and all of these different skeleton heads working for him.
Yeah, that was interesting, the shrunken heads. And I remember when we talked about this movie the last time, well, when we talked about Beetlejuice, we talked about how there's just so much happening in the afterlife, and it's just like visually, like just so much. There's so many different little tiny things that you could latch onto. And so I really enjoyed that about this movie, that we spent more time there seeing all of these crazy little things, even though I think the town, again, really cool, but I think they balanced it really well. We got to spend a little bit of time. I don't remember seeing, now catch me if I'm wrong here, a Cantonese restaurant.
In the town?
In the town.
No.
Wasn't that in the first movie they say Cantonese?
Definitely.
And we were like, whoa,
movie.
Look at them being all cultural. So I didn't see that when we buzzed through the town. I didn't see the hardware store, but we did see something we thought maybe took the place of the hardware store, which is fine.
Yeah.
So Beetlejuice is doing something, don't really know what he's doing. And we get introduced to a new character by Willem Dafoe, Wolf something. And he's a detective, if you will.
He's an actor.
Oh, yes. Thank you. He's an
plays
actor.
A detective.
He plays a detective. And so he's
the underworld.
Doing detective-y stuff in the... Yeah. So that one was kind of interesting. And then we pop back up. I don't know if this is in chronological order, folks. So, enter at your own risk. But we pop back up to the real world, if you will. And they're going to go get Astrid from her school, where she's being teased a little bit about her mom's profession.
Yeah.
And we see that Astrid is very much a factually, science evidence-based kind of personality.
Yeah.
And she's sort of realistic. And so she's at her desk, and we see the conversation, which I think is ridiculous. Lydia, Rory, and Delia are talking about how do we break this to her. Of course, Rory thinks he should do it. This is the boyfriend I'm talking about here. He should, because he recently suffered the loss of his grandfather 40 years ago. He says that 40 years ago. He's one of those people that likes to just one-up you with whatever you're talking about and make it about him. And it annoyed me so much.
Yes, very much inserting himself into the conversation.
Which, again, probably the point. But I love it because Delia's like, enough, I will handle this. And then she just yells from the ground floor of the school, Astrid!
I feel like she was very much Moira in that scene. And there was a couple of scenes throughout Beetlejuice where she was Moira from Schitt's Creek, and that was one of them.
Have you seen the little blurb that's like, Delia walked so Moira could run kind of thing?
Oh, I think I have.
Yeah. So it's very much, I think it's a kind of a spin on the same character.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I'm here for. I love
Eccentric and wonderful. Yeah. So, yeah.
I love it. And so they go home to Winter River. They're going to do his death ceremony there, if you will, his wake and funeral and all that stuff.
I honestly really liked the black sheet over the entire house.
Me too. I was going to say that.
There are no seams in that fabric. Like, they are just, it is just completely coated. And I thought it was honestly a great art piece, like installation, if that's what she was doing, but also a good visual representation of just like the sorrow that they felt and the sadness. But I think I thought that the funeral wake scene was good with like the little kids choir, but the tombstone, we talked about it a little bit in the theater. It's in the shape of a shark's fin because he crashed in a trip that he was going to do bird watching. His airplane crashed in the middle of the ocean, and then he survived the crash, but then was eaten by a shark. And so his tombstone is in the shape of a shark fin. Yeah. Where it states that he was a husband, father, bird watcher. Like that was all we got from Charles this time, was just that he was eaten by a shark and he was there to watch some birds. Like that was what he was doing. So
I did think that was kind of funny. And I saw it a couple of times before I realized it was a shark fin. Yeah, so that was like one of those things they slip in there. I don't know what happened to all the modifications that they did to the house at the end of the first movie. Like they do like a weird sculpture thing, and
they definitely we saw that they had changed the structure, the house, like back to pretty much the original, because we noticed that the wallpaper was back,
but not the outside.
Well, yeah, I think they had changed the outside because they had changed like the actual structure, and that's at the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Like they did the weird stuff. They sort of had like the Maitland's area and the Deetz area. I felt like of the house.
Okay, well, I don't know, because I'm also curious, like when they moved out of this, because they were clearly in the city at the beginning because she was doing her art stuff and like she had her show. So I don't know what city they were in, but then Astrid was in a boarding school. Like they had to drive a little bit to get there.
By the way, if you didn't notice, was the Deetz boarding school or something like that.
There was an art
center.
She had donated
Deetz Art Center. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And had some of Moira's sculptures from the first film.
Yep.
Which I thought was fun.
Her like antler looking one was there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when they were burying Charles there, I'm pretty sure that her dad was buried at Winter River, because that was it. We had already been introduced a little bit about her dad had already, Astrid's dad, so Winona's husband, had already passed away. Not Winona, Lydia. But yeah, I'm pretty sure she was like visiting her dad after her grandpa's funeral. And so I'm just really curious, like, how long were they in Winter River? Like, when did they move out of it? Like, obviously they still had the house, and so it's like, okay, that's like a vacation home or like, family home or whatever. But I'm just kind of a little bit more curious of like the timeline of some of those things and like what's happening with that. But yeah.
We do find out that Astrid's father and mother went through a divorce early on, like when Astrid was a baby. I feel like they said when she was a baby, but then we saw Halloween pictures, so maybe they did like the co-parenting and did Halloween together. I'm not really 100% sure. But we do find out that Astrid is pretty annoyed that her mom can, air quote, see ghosts, but can't see her dad. And she's holding on to that pretty tightly about how that's convenient and all of this. So we know that Astrid doesn't believe her mom. She even says that she's a fraud.
Yeah.
Which kind of poor Lydia, like, that's got to be stressful.
It's a lot to go through.
Yeah.
And she's obviously struggling with different things, such as pills and whatnot. So, yeah.
So we get to the wake, and I love that Delia's like, oh, nobody's shown up yet. And there's like, 25 people there.
Inside and outside. Yeah.
But I also like, we see little Jane whatever, and that's the realtor from the first one who was...
Oh, grown up.
Yeah.
The daughter. It was
the daughter of the realtor of the first one who was like, this house is so big and you can't have kids.
Yeah, it's built for a family or whatever.
Did not like that. But I thought it was fun that, the little girl had her daughter, and it was kind of similar concept, right?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
And then we find out Rory wants to propose to Lydia, which I do not understand this at all. Lydia, what are you doing? Just say no. And he really manipulates her into it, and she still knows she shouldn't, but he's just really digging. And what I really love too is Delia's like, you're making this all about you, and she doesn't like him either.
Yeah,
which I love.
You can see throughout it. Delia's just like, are you sure?
Yeah, because I think she has the ultimate balance of, I don't like this guy, I don't think you should like this guy, but at the end of the day, it's your life, so I'm going to support you either way because I love you, but whatever. Which I think is really fun for Delia.
I had leaned over to Rogie in the movie when he was doing his proposal, and they were talking about their backstory about how he had met her at a grievance retreat or something. And I was like, he was definitely there to pick her up or pick somebody up. And I just found that I thought he was sketchy from the very beginning, even with his story. And so... Yeah,
I didn't pick up on that, that he was there to scam people. at the grieving retreat or whatever. But I did not like him, and I was picking up that he was awful.
Yeah.
Not schmutz. Smarmy. I don't even know the proper definition of that as I'm thinking of it, but smarmy is the word that comes to mind. So we'll see.
Yeah.
So they end up saying yes, and of course, Astrid's character is like, this is BS, and she takes off, which we kind of figured that would happen. And then we see her drive over the bridge, and I had to breathe in really deeply because I didn't know if she was going to crash. It would have been
going to be a dog show
perfect,
up, and then
yes, for a dog to cross right before her, right after or something. She doesn't crash on the bridge. She does almost get hit like 3 times. Like,
yeah, she struggles.
She keeps looking back.
Yeah.
Instead of just stopping and looking back, she keeps looking back to see what she almost hit and goes through a fence and runs into a tree. And there's a boy in the tree. Aw, that's so cute. Who she proceeds to tell that her mother is full of it and blah, blah, blah. But we do find out that they're getting married on Halloween, which is fun. Now she goes back to the house. I don't remember, though, if she finds the model at this point.
She goes upstairs and finds the model, and then she also finds an old picture book
of her.
And she tries
dad,
to have like a real conversation with her mom, and her mom just like skips over it, and that's just one of her like driving frustrations.
I think that she wouldn't have skipped over it if she hadn't found the flyer. Like, they start talking about it, and then she sees the flyer that says Beetlejuice. And Lydia freaks out because I don't know if you remember. I mean, you probably do because you just listened to it. But in the first movie, she got tricked into saying Beetlejuice. Mm-hmm. And so she knows that it is a very powerful, concept there. So she's not a fan. This is just coming to my favorite part, I think, of the movie, where she drags Astrid down the stairs and Astrid storms off again or whatever, one another time. And she starts chatting with Delia. Lydia does. And she's doing weird breathing exercises like, oh, that's it. That's it. And Delia's like, oh my God, I thought a moose was going to attack. She had the best lines. She was great. So great. But they talk for a minute. And they talk about how Delia made the comment that Astrid is just revenge on Lydia for how Lydia treated Delia.
Yeah.
But they also say, like, we turned out okay.
Yeah.
And there's sort of like this whole conversation about how they found their way together. Mm-hmm. You can tell even now, Lydia, in the first movie, she was just like, ugh, whatever, anytime Delia was talking. But in this, like, she may still sort of think whatever, but she's also, like, you can tell each of them are free to be themselves with each other, and they accept each other.
Yeah. They don't hold back when they're talking with each other. They feel confident in being able to talk and share, and they've just been able to build that type of a relationship where they are comfortable with each other, whereas Lydia wouldn't even want to be in the same room with her when she was a teenager. So
she's like, you do you, I'm gonna do me, we're good together though.
It's definitely nice to see that growth in their relationship.
I loved that. I loved it so much. And then she makes the comment like, you have got to take back your life. What happened to that obnoxious goth girl?
Yeah.
Like, bring her back. And so I really like that because even though maybe she was annoyed at Lydia and didn't appreciate all of the things, she still recognized certain things in her and loved that about her.
Yeah.
So there's my soft and sentimental blurb of the movie. I loved that.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that there was just kind of several different plot lines going on throughout the movie. Like, there wasn't really one, like, hey, streamline, this is what we're doing. Because we find out the history of Beetlejuice a little bit more, not a ton, but like a little bit. And then we also get more history of like her relationship with her dad and kind of their family. We get that relationship of Delia and Lydia and how that's evolved over the years. We get more of how Lydia's just kind of been struggling with like her relationship with her daughter and also her annoying relationship with Rory, her boyfriend slash manager, and how she's just like kind of a pushover in that. And so like we there's just a lot of these different A, B, C, D, and E plots like going on throughout it that sometimes it was a little bit of like, oh, okay, like this is where we are and like this is what's going on. And so just kind of a little bit of jumping around of like just kind of everything that's going on with it.
I agree. I can see how somebody maybe, this is not the case for me, but maybe would have thought it was too much or too confusing because there were so many different little plot lines. They do all come together in the end.
Yeah.
But they were threaded really well. But I could see how somebody might feel like they were kind of confusing. Yeah. How did you feel about Michael Keaton's character? Like, how did he age? How did you feel about him?
I thought he did a great job. I mean, honestly, he's phenomenal. But he was definitely less like
creepy,
predatory creepy in this one, which I appreciate because that's one of the things I really didn't like about the first film. And so, yeah, he was definitely more manageable in this one. But yeah, I mean, I thought he did a great job with just Beetlejuicing it up and just kind of doing his different things. And there were some fun different scenes where like, you know, they would just kind of do different takes or like he would talk in a different language. And so like,
I thought that was fun.
Yeah, it was
very fun, weird, but fun
to see just kind of like the different things they did with it, but also them tying back into the first film. So I liked being able to kind of see his character, because he did have a little bit of character development, but it was mainly just that we saw some of his history and then just kind of what he's been doing for these last 30 years while still waiting around kind of for Lydia. Like he's always kept her in his mind. Like he has a picture of her on his desk, like,
which is odd because it's not like she made that big of an impression on him. Like he literally was only trying to marry her to get out of the afterlife.
Yeah.
Or to be free or whatever you want to call it. That's the only reason he was latched onto her. And then it just got this weird obsession kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was just kind of, that was the closest he had ever gotten. And so it was just kind of like, yeah, memories from this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This is a really fun point that you can bring up is how two people interpret certain events very differently.
Yes.
And how your memories can warp into different things and you can feel very differently about things than you thought you would. But yeah, he was definitely less like predatorially creepy. I agree with that. But he's still such a weird, creepy character that he does it so well, but I don't like watching it.
Yeah.
It is cringy.
There was a couple scenes in it with that even like Rogi was just kind of like, I did not like that. Like, because he was like asking me like some of the differences between the first one and this one. And I was just kind of like, yeah, like, I mean, the first one was definitely like creepier for me. And he's like, I don't know. There was a couple scenes like with like just kind of some of the like actuality of like how it was happening, like how someone might burst because of, you know, it with like, you know, guts or something like pouring out, or like, you know, there was a couple of different scenes like that where it was like, oh, that's kind of gross. And I was just kind of like, I mean, yeah, but it's also not like, it was just kind of, it was fun to see the differences between the two different movies.
There's definitely like a shock factor with it versus an actual, it's not supposed to be super realistic.
Yeah.
It's supposed to make you go, oh, ew, versus something that's anatomically realistic and just something that's like strange to look at.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that they kept a pretty good clip because everything happened just over a couple of days. There was also just a lot going on in those couple of days. Like there were a couple of things that I feel like I wanted to hear more of about it, but we just kind of said it and moved on. I did have red flags about like the new boy being introduced just because you feel like something's going to happen there. And then obviously with the mistress that we met at the beginning that stapled herself together. Like, she was a pretty big lead in it because she was after Beetlejuice, like trying to figure out like where he was and find him so she could take her revenge. And so yeah, we just had lots of just kind of different people of like, okay, like, are they really bad? Are they, you know, on the good team, but we just can't realize it yet? And so it was just kind of interesting trying to play that up. And I pride myself in like being able to watch a movie and like figure stuff out kind of closer to the beginning. So I was pretty excited that a couple of things I like said to Rogie in the theater like ended up happening closer towards the end, or like coming up, or I was like, oh, I said like, you know, this is where these people were. These people were actually ghosts, and you know, that ghost was going to get out or whatever. And so, yeah, that was kind of fun.
I think we get one of those big musical scenes, sort of like the dinner party scene.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very, I'm not familiar with the song. I think it was called MacArthur Park or something like that. It just went on for a really long time.
It was a long scene.
Like,
there was a
we
lot
could have
going
cut it in
on.
half and I would have still been entertained without it being quite so long.
Yeah. We did get a lot more people like flying, or not necessarily flying, but like floating and like levitating in this movie than I
think
expected.
It's a lot cheaper to do now.
It happened multiple times. I was getting a little bit of like Casper the Friendly Ghost type of levitating vibes at one point.
See, and you say that, and I flip back to Smallville in the barn. Yeah.
Yeah, so like there was just kind of like just bits and pieces of other films that I feel like kind of brought into this, which I mean they were purposely doing for a couple of them. I feel like yeah, they were definitely just kind of bringing in those callbacks. But yeah, there's just kind of some randomness like with the William Dafoe character, like, you know, just kind of like what on earth is he doing here? Like what's happening?
Yes,
but
what even is
it was
his
still
character?
Fun. So
I really liked the coffee girl who was giving him coffee all the time, like
constantly giving him
was
coffee.
So fun. Like,
when was she
not?
That. His trash basket just full of like crushed coffee cups.
And then she's holding the cue cards at one point.
Yes,
which
that one
I just loved.
Made my heart happy. Like it just made me giggle. Yeah. There was a lot of different fun. I don't feel like there was quite as much to look at in the background as there was in the first film, but there was definitely stuff going on.
Because we spent more time there.
We
got
to
Barbara
and
really look at it a lot more.
Yeah, I was glad that we got to see the like sand snakes again. It was fun to kind of that they came back. My husband was just kind of like, is this like a Dune reference? Like, what's going on here? Are we gonna ride the sandworms? And I was just like, maybe if you watch the first film, you'll find out. Like, I don't know. So yeah, that was fun. Some of the things that I was a little, I think, annoyed about was like, we would make statements to something, or like the book came back into play of like the undead or whatever. And that was my whole thing with the first film, is like, just sit down and read the book. And so like there were some callbacks to it, or like, you know, it talks about like loopholes and different stuff like that. But then there was no clarification about how that happened later on. And so like I was kind of waiting for a few things, and I don't feel like I got that. So maybe I just wasn't paying quite enough attention, or it just like didn't
feel like with the end they left it open that they could do another one if they wanted to.
Okay.
But I also feel like it ended in a place where they wouldn't have to close the story out. So not answering some of those questions doesn't prevent you from enjoying the film, and doesn't make you mad enough that you wouldn't want to watch it again. It just, you're like, I would have been happy to get those answered.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or that's at least how I felt about it. I would have been curious about that, but I'm okay. It does end in a way. This is kind of a bummer for me, because I like how the first one ended, showing how the Deetzes have figured out how to coexist with the Maitlands.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that. This one sort of ends with kind of a weird dream sequence, and Lydia has shut down Ghost House, and she's going to start focusing on the living. And it sort of ends with like this weird dream sequence, and then she wakes up, and then it ends.
And then there was like a dream sequence within the dream sequence.
Yeah.
So, like it was like she dream sequence, wake up, dream sequence, wake up.
So we don't really know.
We really are left on a cliffhanger of like where even like her actual relationship, like with her
Right.
daughter. Like, where is that? Like, what's
And
happening with that?
that's what I was kind of missing.
And so, yeah, I feel like we were definitely left on more of a cliffhanger, like not a hardcore hanger, but like it's a hanger. And so, yeah.
Well, we're just not getting the closure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, a cliffhanger is like something happens and you immediately need to know what happens next.
I mean, I want to know.
Yeah, but the story doesn't
yeah.
lose anything because you don't know.
Yeah.
A cliffhanger to me is an interruption in the story.
Yeah.
Where
So,
you should know, but you don't.
I think overall it was a decent film. I enjoyed some of the callbacks and like the bits and pieces to it. It's not going to be one where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to watch this, you know, every Halloween. Like, I mean, but that's how I felt about the first one. Like, I wasn't really going to watch it again for it. If I would watch Beetlejuice again, it would just be to like look at the background stuff of what was happening in it.
Yeah. I would probably watch this one again a couple times.
Yeah.
Again, like you said, it's probably not my every Halloween kind of movie, but I really always liked the Delia character, and I'm seeing that Michael Keaton is 73.
Wow.
So I don't know what he's going to be doing, you know, in another 30 years. I don't know that we're going to get a Beetlejuice movie.
Is it 30? Was it 30 years between
35,
the first one?
I believe.
Wow.
And then Catherine O'Hara is 70. So, well, that one's not really that big a deal, but
yeah.
I would miss her character.
Yeah.
In these.
Because it will be interesting. Because, I mean, they sold the house in Winter River. So, like, they could go to, and if they do another one,
Did
they could go
sell
to
the house?
They signed the papers. Because the mortgage, the realtor, her sweater, it was
reverse
so cute.
Mortgage.
It was mortgage, yeah,
which is
crocheted
just mortgage
reversed. And so, yeah, I just thought that was so cute and punny that she was wearing a reverse mortgage sweater for her Halloween costume.
We don't really, outside of them selling the papers and saying they're okay to sell the house, we don't really see, like, we don't have that end clip that shows that they sold the house.
Mm-hmm. So you think that they could have just gone back and she could have just like...
I think they could have. I don't know why they wouldn't have.
If she's living life among the living, I don't feel like she would go back to Winter River.
But Winter River's not all dead.
Yeah, but there's so many memories of that.
I don't know. Maybe they sold it. Maybe they kept it. I don't know.
Yeah.
They could have gone either way.
Yeah.
And Winona Ryder is 52.
Yeah. So, I mean, she could be in another one.
She could.
Honestly, if they did, you know, in 10 years, pulled out another one,
I'm sure.
I feel like it would be pretty simple. But, yeah.
They could do it. I just don't know if they would. I think it would depend on if they felt like they had a fun enough story to tell. I don't know because I'm not a writer, but I have this feeling like if you know where you're going to go with the story and you've written a trilogy, like you can end them differently, so you know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But if you are just inspired and you're like, oh, this could be a different chapter in the story, and you want to write that, you don't really have to go anywhere else. And I appreciate that. Like, I'm okay. I was okay with leaving Beetlejuice without doing a sequel. I think the sequel didn't take away from the first one at all, but it didn't necessarily, like, you didn't have to see the first one to see the second one. It just, the throwbacks were fun.
Yeah.
I feel like they gave you enough of the information.
Yeah. Yeah. There wasn't that big of a deal. Like, they made a couple comments about it, but wasn't like, oh my gosh, that was key information from the first one that led to the second one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I really liked it. I would see it again. I probably won't watch it every Halloween, but I think I especially would see it again this year because it was just, there was so much happening in it. And I can see where somebody might be watching this and get overstimulated really easy because there is so much happening.
There's a lot going on.
It's not like the set pieces are so detailed, and, you know, if you're watching the actors and you're watching their mouths and what they're saying and you're listening for that, you might be missing some stuff in the background. So I think that it's definitely one that warrants at least one more viewing just so you pick up everything.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was good. I love a lot of those actors. So I would say definitely go see it. Call us or comment and tell us your thoughts. And let us know if there's any particular movies you want us to check out that we haven't seen for the upcoming holiday season. You can get a hold of us at 240-668-4376 or at FlowerPod on Instagram.
Yeah, man.
All right. Bye.
Bye.